Well, guys, we have our first post NHL playoffs trade. Kevin Fiala is heading to the Los Angeles Kings for a prospect and a first round pick. And we're going to get into details of who this prospect is and where the first round pick is located in this year's draft. Sorry, Luca, pull out the details.
Well, first things first. Kevin Fiala gets traded, like you mentioned, for a prospect and a first-round pick from LA. The LA pick is actually 19th overall, which now puts Minnesota at two first-round picks this year in the NHL draft. They have pick number 19 and pick number 24. They're trading away a star forward in Kevin Fiala, a guy who needed a contract and has signed an extension with the LA Kings, 7 years. 7.9 million
Holy
average annual
crap.
value per season. So Kevin Fiala locked up in LA for 7 years, which makes this move even more of a bigger win for the LA Kings than it already is. I think for Minnesota, look, I know a lot of Minnesota fans are going to be disappointed about it. I know how good Kevin Fiala was this season for Minnesota: 85 points, 33 goals. You can't ask for anything better. He's had good seasons in Minnesota too. The year before that, 40 points in 50 games. He was solid. But I think that the problem with Kevin Fiala is the fact that they had to buy out Ryan Suter and Zach Parise's contract, and unfortunately, they just didn't have the cap space to keep him. And I think, look, they get a decent prospect. Brock Faber's a guy, second round pick, 45th overall by the Kings in 2020. He's 19 years old. He's a right-handed defenseman. He's a good skater, according to elite prospects, who shifts well while gliding to avoid getting knocked off the rush. There are some defenders who defend the blue line violently. Others are more calculated. Faber suffocates the opponents and guiding them with his stick to the outside and enveloping them. So he's a good player. I mean, he had 14 points in 32 games for the University of Minnesota, and he moves on to he's actually going to Minnesota, so it's kind of funny that he doesn't really have to move anywhere. He just has to stay there. But
I mean,
uh,
yeah, it's always interesting, Sometimes general managers, when they make a move, they look at, what university they play at as well. So there's, like you were saying before, there's a connection there
yeah, for
already.
sure.
So I mean, that's pretty interesting in terms of that. And look, it's been rumored for a long time now that Kevin Fiala was always a trade piece in Minnesota. They were trying to dangle him and see what they could get for him. And the move is made essentially during the 2021 2022 offseason, and I think that this is a freaking fantastic move for Los Angeles, a team that, surprised a lot of people, made the playoffs last year with, in my opinion, a mediocre team. Um, and now they get a guy like Kevin Fiala who's going to be playing top 6 minutes. They did lose Dustin Brown. His contract is off the books. He was a good leadership guy, but again, you know, um, way past his prime, in my opinion. So having a guy like Kevin Fiala come in and replace a guy like Brown, I'm not saying he's gonna play that role. I'm just saying he's gonna come in and fill up, the role in the top six. Even though Brown was playing up and down the lineup over the last couple of years, that's a huge upgrade already. And last offseason they added Arvidsson, which was a fantastic addition. They didn't give up that much. And, I think LA just going to keep on trending upwards. And it's another team to look out for this year that I think will, push for another playoff spot again.
Well, I think that's one of the things too. I think with like you mentioned, you had talked about Dustin Brown and his retirement. I think this kind of puts LA in a really good position. They've had about $19 million in cap space. That's obviously going to be reduced now to about 12, 13 million after this, about 11, 12 million after this Fiala extension. I like this move for LA. I do. You're getting a guy who's 25 years old. He's had three really good seasons in Minnesota. He's a guy that's proven. He's not a guy that he's a project or he's an issue and you got to see what you're going to get. You know what you're getting with Kevin Fiala. You're getting a guy who's going to score you at least 20, 25 goals. He hit 30 this year. Chances are he's going to be probably on the first line with Anze Kopitar. But this puts LA in a really good position because it kind of puts them in a situation where it's like they didn't have to give up much to get him. I know that they gave up the 19th overall pick, but if you look at LA's prospect pool, they have one of the deepest prospect pools in the league, right? And They get a young guy who's 25 years old. He's playing pretty much. He's not even in his prime yet, and he's playing some of the best hockey of his career. And I think in LA on a line with Anze Kopitar, or even on a line with Philip Danault, and you add guys like Kaliev and Byfield coming up, and Turcotte as well. There's a lot of there's a lot of interesting pieces there in LA, and I think Fiala adds to that in a positive way. And LA, look, one of the things that they struggled with last year, I think, was goal scoring. I know that they weren't always the best offensive team at times, and I think Fiala adds to that as well. So it's going to be good to see.
And just looking at who was in the mix, there was rumors that New Jersey was in it, Ottawa, Montreal, but we can confirm by Renaud Lavoie from TVA Sports that
Yeah.
Montreal Canadiens were not in it. They didn't have any space in cap space to add a guy like Kevin Fiala to their roster. um Kevin Weeks was saying that LA is one of the deepest prospect pools in the National Hockey League, and I agree with that. And Mike Russo um tweets that Brock Faber was working on an essay for college when the trade went down. And yeah, you're seeing that he's a world class skater. He's tough, a right shot defenseman, and the Wilder and are kind of light in their prospect pool. You
Well,
have Matt Boldy, who made the NHL this year, so he took the next jump to the next level. So he's going to be a part of their roster next year. So I think this opens up space for Matt Boldy to have play more minutes, essentially, now that Kevin Fiala is gone.
yeah,
Um,
I want to just answer Winterboard's question, because he said, was it noted who else was a consideration? Seems like not much was given for him. Well, Chris kind of mentioned it. New Jersey and Ottawa were in the mix as well. The thing is with this deal, and I know that you're talking, and then you also mentioned how you don't know how the Ducks were in it. They have $39 million in cap space. I think in terms of LA, you're looking at a team that is unfortunately just they're in the middle of the pack. They're not necessarily a team that missed the playoffs. The Ducks missed the playoffs, and I think that pick was too high. And again, you have to take into consideration that this guy was an RFA, right? So maybe there was a situation where, like an example, like Ottawa or New Jersey, because of the fact that there was uncertainty there about whether he would sign there or not. Maybe that's a reason why the deal
Wait,
was
actually, I'm
was
going
the
to
way.
add to that, Luca. Nowadays, GMs do not make that mistake where they're going to trade for a player and then the guy is not going to sign, because
Of
that,
course.
on their part, is pretty stupid.
Well,
And I think a lot of us could agree on that statement that I
well,
just mentioned right now.
I think
And
I think what you're saying, and I think what that's kind of what I was bringing up to the point. It's like there maybe was an uncertainty about whether he would sign or not, and I think that that's kind of why I think LA makes a lot of sense too. It's not like Fiala is going to a team where it's like, oh, it doesn't make sense. Why are they trading for him? LA makes a ton of sense, and I do think could Minnesota have gotten a little bit more? Yes, but I think because of the fact that he had RFA rights, and again the uncertainty about whether he would sign or not could have played a factor. But I mean, LA announced that they signed him to a $7.9 million extension. So
and
it
look,
could be that Minnesota could have got more. We don't know what the other offers were, unfortunately. But I think if you're a Minnesota fan, like you mentioned, you talked about Matt Boldy. I think this opens up space for Matt Boldy to really take the next step. And it allows them to also, save some money and not necessarily lose much. They get another first round pick. They can still, I talked about this before we started recording. Minnesota's got two first round picks. There's a lot of room that they can do now with those two picks. They might move it and go get some other assets. So Minnesota is going to be a team to watch over the next couple of days, kind of see where they're at, and see what they can do, because they have two first round picks now. So maybe they move up in the draft to try to draft
I
someone
mean, look, they also have
different.
Marco
So
Rossi, who's a guy who can make the jump as well,
they have
on
Alston in that
offense.
too.
So like, there's options in their prospect pool. They don't have the best prospect pool, but I think it's good enough for some of those guys to have the opportunity to play now. Um, I just want to see where Fiala fits in terms of, playing time, right? You already have that first line that's essentially locked in. And does Fiala come into LA and take someone's spot on that first line? Because this guy had 85 points in 82 games, 33 goals and 52 assists. It's a career year for him, but normally he's a 40 to 50 point player, and he has played in Nashville. And this kind of like, brings up a thought in my mind where did they purposely make this trade to reconnect Arvidsson and Fiala, who both played together in Nashville? And
Maybe.
I think that, there's something, in the works there where I think maybe they might play on the same line together. And I think it's a great move for LA. Look, the guy had a career year, so of course you're gonna have to give up a little bit more than what he's actually worth. They sold high on him, in my opinion. Minnesota got a pretty, solid prospect. I'm not gonna say that it's a prospect. I think it's more of like a B prospect in my opinion. But the key centerpiece in this trade was the first overall pick. And right
First round
now,
pick, not first overall.
oh yeah, sorry, first round pick. My bad.
The Habs didn't trade.
First
The Habs didn't
overall. Oh
get
my
Fiala,
god.
bro.
Imagine.
That'd be crazy.
So like I think this is a good move for LA. They're bolstering up their offensive core right now. They haven't been this lethal since their glory days in the 2010s. So I think this is like a fantastic move in the right direction for LA.
For sure.
But let's just answer some questions here.
Yes.
We have Vico who says LA got Fiala on a good contract and paid for what Colorado paid for Lehkonen and Fleece.
Well, not quite. I mean, I wouldn't disagree. LA definitely won this trade. You called it a fleece. I mean, it depends, but the thing is, you got to realize is that 19th pick in a draft that's pretty deep, it goes a long way. And I think that one thing that Colorado didn't do is they didn't acquire, like they acquired Lehkonen, but they didn't trade away their first round pick. And I know that people would turn around and say, oh well, Justin Barron is technically that, and you're right. But I think that there's a limit to what the draft to what the draft brings, and I think also the fact that Minnesota had the opportunity of getting 2 first round picks, helped them. I like this move for LA, like you said. I wouldn't call it a fleece. I think it's a fair trade for both teams, because Faber's a good prospect, and if Minnesota can turn the 19th pick and the 24th pick into something, or if they can draft two players is more than one, and that's good. So definitely no complaints there. And then obviously there's Winterborn as well, who said all fair points for sure. Guess there's always the Brinkett. That's going to be an interesting one, and I think that that's what a lot of teams are waiting on too. Right? We talked about New Jersey. We talked about Ottawa being in the mix. There was Buffalo that was in the mix as well too. I have a feeling that some of these teams, if Chicago is still willing to move Alex DeBrincat, some of these teams are still going to be in the mix for Alex DeBrincat. And so this offseason so far just got interesting. We saw Shea Weber get traded last week, and now we see Kevin Fiala get traded today. There's definitely going to be more moves coming in the NHL, so stay tuned for that. And it's offseason, baby. Let's get this start. Let's get this show on the road.
And right before I look at the players available that Minnesota could draft at 19, I just want to show off a picture of Kevin Fiala in oh my god, can you there you go.
There it is.
Kevin Fiala in an LA jersey. He looks fantastic already. Yeah, I'm just gonna take a look at the players that are available in terms of Minnesota. A lot of people were predicting that Jimmy Snuggerud, did I pronounce his name properly?
Yes.
He's a right hand he's a right winger for USA U18. He was projected originally to get drafted by LA, but now this is Minnesota's pick, so maybe they could draft him. They could also draft a guy like Philip Massar, who's a right winger for Paparat.
Well, funny,
Um,
funny you mentioned Jimmy Snuggard. He's actually a University of Minnesota commit, so he's actually committing to playing for the University of Minnesota this season. So that there might be a connection there. Maybe Minnesota looked at it and said, "We're interested in this guy. We think he's going to be there at 19." And he's also, he's going to be teammates with Brock Faber as well. So there might be a connection there to
and
that for
and
sure.
two other options are Frank Nazar, center, Team USA U18, and also Daniela Yurov as well. So those are 4 guys that I would say that Minnesota are probably looking really hard at, and I think they're all fantastic prospects. And at number 19, I think that's a quality prospect for them.
For sure.
And not only that, you're getting a prospect
And
like
I
Faber
think
as well. So
in LA's perspective too, we talk about LA traded away their first round pick. Yeah, but you're like I mentioned before, you're getting a guy who's already proven. Like the Kings don't need that first round pick, right? You've already got what you need with that 19th pick, you've already essentially gotten someone who's already better than that anyways. So I think this trade makes a lot of sense, and I'm happy for Fiala. I like this move a lot, and I think it's going to benefit Philip Danault too. And I know that I was going to mention it before because I was looking at the contracts that the Kings had. You know, we talk about a guy like Anze Kopitar. We talk about a guy like Philip Danault. There's Quinton Byfield as well. It allows LA to bolster their offense, but I think it allows a guy like Philip Danault, who already last year had a really good year in LA and played really well. Maybe if they throw Kevin Fiala on his wing, he might even develop even bigger offensive instincts and become an even better player. So I think it helps them a lot. And having a guy who scored 30 goals last year, LA's power play kind of had issues a little bit too at scoring goals. That's going to help them a
They
lot.
weren't the most offensive team. We'll put it to that. And getting a guy like Fiala, gives them a boost on offense and also on the power play. But
For sure.
the LA Kings are not getting an old player.
No.
Kevin Fiala is 25 years old. So, I mean, look, and he has yet to hit his prime, or he has entered his prime right now because he just had his career year. So, I mean, look, I'm gonna take a look at the lineups very quickly before we end this episode. See where maybe he could play in the lineup, but look, so you have the first line, Kopitar, Kempe, and Fiolo, which I think is going to stay intact. I think they did a fantastic job last year. And you have Philip Danault, who's paired up with Trevor Moore. And, I mean, the left wing spot, I'm pretty sure it was Carl Grunstrom. So I think Kevin Fiala would fit on that second line, playing beside Philip Danault and Trevor Moore. Trevor Moore was a surprise last year. He had a very good season. So I think he's suitable for the second line. If they want a more balanced top six, that's where Fiala fits on the second line with Philip Danault and Trevor Moore.
Maybe, but
unless they add more pieces.
for sure. And I think, but I mean, what's interesting too, right? You mentioned Fiala and stuff too. There's Adrian Kempe that needs a contract. LA's top six is going to be a really good top six. They've got, like you said,
very young top six too.
Arvidsson, Kempe, Iafallo, Trevor Moore, and now you've added Kevin Fiala to that mix. It allows them to do well, and they've also got Kaliev. They've also got Byfield, who's coming up. Alex Turcotte's a guy that's been up and down as well too. Gabe Velarde is a guy who, there's a lot of question marks about. There was Athanasiou, who had a decent year for LA. So LA's got a really interesting offensive core, and I kind of like what Paula said here. She kind of talked about how the trade makes a lot of sense, and that Fiala seems to be what they are missing. And I agree with that. I think, you look at a team that was 20th in goal scoring in the NHL last year. This guy bolsters their offense. He's going to help them on the power play. I mentioned that before. And I'm very impressed with the move that the LA Kings made. And I think that they win this trade. I think if you have to look at a team that wins the trade, I think LA wins it simply for the fact that they got him signed. And a contract at $7.9 million is a really good deal, especially if he continues the production that he put up, right?
And Minnesota has pieces, it was stated by Michael Russo that they have 4 picks in the top 56, 19th, 24, 47, 56. And not only that, Minnesota is a playoff contender. So to have, a surplus of picks, but quality picks, and to be a playoff contender at the same time, they are in a very good position this offseason. They can either trade those picks away or they could draft with those picks. But I just wanted to say thank you so much, guys, for checking this episode out. I hope you liked our trade breakdown. Make sure to check our previous trade breakdowns as well in our past videos. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share this video to any Los Angeles King fans or the Minnesota Wild fans. And we want to hear your thoughts in the comments section below. Is this a good trade for the Los Angeles Kings, a good deal for both, or a good deal for the Minnesota Wild? Thank you so much, guys, and we'll see you in the next episode.